live in the Poconos with my wife and kids. There's a small lake about a quarter-mile away from our backyard. I commonly take my kids down there to go swimming. Up until last week, that is. Now I'm never letting them go down there again. I haven't told anyone about this in fear of sounding crazy. It was last Saturday we went over to the lake and set up our chairs on the sand. It's like a little private beach in our own backyard. It's been amazing. Me and my wife sat in our beach chairs enjoying the sun while our kids were splashing around in the water. I always tell them not to go too deep, they're still young, 6 and 8. We sat there for a good 2 hours that day. Neither of us were in the mood to get wet. Eventually, my wife got tired and decided to walk back home. I agreed to stay with the kids a little while longer as they were somehow still having so much fun playing in the sand and water. The sun was setting at this point. I was getting tired. They were going a little too deep, so I called at them to come back closer to the shore. They couldn't hear me apparently, so I stood up and got closer. Before I could call them again, I noticed something in the water. It looked like a black roundish object and it was moving closer to my kids. I ran into the water closer to my kids, calling them to come out. When they got close enough, I dragged them out myself. When I turned back to the water, the object was gone. My kids were confused as hell. I didn't know what to tell them, so I just told them it was time to go home. We packed up and walked back to the house, but I wasn't happy. When I got home, I was uncomfortable with what I just saw. That thing looked like no sea creature known to man. Dinner was waiting for us when we got home. I eat really slow, thinking about the object in the water and whether or not to tell my wife. My wife asked me what's wrong. She noticed that I was eating slow. I decided not to tell her right then. After dinner, I took a flashlight with me and walked back down to the lake. By then, it was already dark out. I got to the lake, but to be honest, I didn't even know what I was expecting to find. I shined the flashlight all around the surface of the water, searching for the black object. And just then, I heard a large splash come from somewhere in the lake. The kind of splash of something emerging out of the water. I thought it might be some kind of animal in the lake. I shined the light all over the place, searching for the source of the sound. And then I found it, and I realized I was dead wrong. There was a silhouette of a humanoid figure with long black hair covering its whole face. It just stood there facing me, but not staring at me. I dropped the flashlight in horror and sprinted all the way back up to my house, slamming the door shut behind me. I haven't told anybody. What kills me is that leak is only a quarter-mile away from my house. And for all I know, that thing could be watching me through my window right now as I write this. A few years ago, something very weird happened with my best friend and me. I was 15 years old. One night, I decided to sleep over at my friend's house. After a night of scary movies, we were in the mood to do something exciting. Not far from my friend's house was a demolishing site, a block of houses in a very terrible state that would be demolished the day after tomorrow. The local government would demolish them to make room for new houses. The whole site was fenced in, and warning signs saying "Do not enter" hung everywhere. The houses were boarded up by planks, doors and windows were sealed shut. No one could get in. We decided to go for a walk on the old block and take some random photographs. My friend knew a spot where we could enter the old block. When we walked there, we noticed that every house was boarded up tight so we couldn't get in. We noticed a house with a window on the top floor that wasn't very well boarded up. We could see into the room. We took a photo with a digital camera. Later we went home and took a look at the pictures we made. Suddenly we came across the photo of the window. We saw a woman dressed in a brown raincoat with white skin and black hair. As long as we could visibly see, the woman looks very sad. We hadn't seen any woman up there when we took the picture. Moreover, the windows and doors were boarded. We went back to the house to see if that was correct. After investigation, it really was. Everything was tied shut and there wasn't a woman. This story isn't mine, but rather of my friend from Japan. I'll call him Rita. It happened back when Rita was only about 11 or 12 years old. Rita was a rather attractive kid and had his fair share of admirers. One girl was extreme with her crush, though. I'll call her Ayano. Ayano was a lot older than Rita. She was 17. She was an acquaintance of Rita and lived down the road from him. Rita hadn't thought much of her until she started stalking him. Every day and every night she would be following him one way or another, whether it be in person or online. Rita first started getting the creeps when she would start messaging him over 20 times a day. Stuff like, "Be safe," "Are you all right?" "Sleep well," etc. This was a little weird, but he overlooked it. Then the messages started getting creepier. Instead of the usual checkup emails, they got more personal. Things like, "You should eat your lunch" if he skipped lunch, or "I think your sister is hungry" when his little sister was crying. Rita stopped using both his phone and social media at this point, but it doesn't end there. Rita's mother was almost never home, so he was frequently looked after by babysitters. One day he had a new babysitter. It was Ayano. Nothing was particularly strange as she looked after him and his siblings. But she did get a lot closer to his mother than he would like. One day at school, Ayano approached Rita and told him that his mother would be out of the country for a week, and that she told her to let Rita stay at her house. Rita was hesitant at first, but hey, it was his mother's wish. He couldn't go against that. Ayano told him that his mother had already left, so he could go home with her after school that day. Rita reluctantly agreed and went home with her. When he got there, her parents weren't home. Things get a little blurry here as my friend choked up telling the story as it still scares him today. He said Ayano would play weird games with him. Stuff like family, which he insisted she was the wife and he was the husband, as well as things like cops and robbers and games to see who would get scared first, where she would blindfold him and leave him in a silent room for hours on end. He was 5 days into staying at her house and Ayano had gone to her part-time job. She had left the doors locked and the windows were too high to jump from, so he just stayed in front of the TV, where he saw a chilling news report. It was a missing child report, the missing child being him. Before he had the time to catch the number to call, the TV switched off, and Ayano was standing behind him with the remote in her hand. Rita had freaked out, crying and screaming. Ayano held him, but he managed to wiggle from her grasp just in time to open a window and cry for help. Luckily for him, a couple were walking past, heard his cries, and called the police. Within an hour, police arrived and found him locked in her bedroom with a blindfold and his hands tied. Due to Ayano still being a minor, Rita is unsure of what happened to her. He says he only remembers the police taking her away while his mother was hugging him. He moved to Australia after this and hasn't seen his kidnapper since, but he still cowers at the sound of her name. About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in the major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommates that even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But all that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near police-patrolled park quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on the foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I went down a short side street in order to loop back down my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street on my side was the silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with a nod-forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance-walking headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still until I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off of him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast. I was so shocked, and I stood there for some time staring at him, and then he started moving towards me again. He took giant, exaggerated, tiptoed steps, as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone, except he was moving very, very quickly. I'd like to say at this point that I ran away or pulled out my pepper spray or cell phone or anything at all, but I didn't. I just stood there completely frozen as the smiling man crept toward me. And then he stopped again about a car lengths away from me, still smiling a smile, still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. What I meant to ask was, what the Amerikaner do you want, in an angry, commanding tone. What came out was a whimper. Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice that only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around very slowly and started walking away. Just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him got bigger and bigger. He was coming back my way. And this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off the side road and back onto a better lit road with sparse traffic looking behind me. Then he was nowhere to be found. The rest of my way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile. But he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk, he didn't work high, he looked completely and utterly insane. And that's a very, very scary thing to see. In the mid-'80s, my mom was a cleaner in Australia. She would clean houses in suburban areas and would sometimes do houses in rural or wine regions. She would leave business cards at the local shops and got most of her business this way, and some through referrals and word of mouth. One day she got a call from a lady who sounded like she was around 60 asking Mom to clean her old farmhouse. She made a lot of odd demands, and Mom would usually meet clients before taking on new business. In this case, the lady did not want to meet my mom and said she would leave the keys under the front doormat. Mom agreed, mainly because the lady was quite obviously a wealthy and was offering to pay Mom substantially more than she would reasonably expect. Mom went to the house on a Monday morning and said she already felt unnerved by the long driveway. The house was essentially in the middle of the very large and very empty property. She found the keys and started cleaning. About an hour into the clean, she hears the back door shut. Mom was told no one would be at the house, so she immediately felt unsafe. She stood frozen in the kitchen for what she said felt like 3 or 4 minutes, although she said it couldn't been much longer. There was no other car on the property. She wanted to leave immediately, but had 2 rooms left to do. Both were bedrooms. She said as time passed and she heard nothing else, she decided that perhaps there was nothing, or perhaps something had fallen and it wasn't the door after all. She walked up the hallway and steps into the bedroom. All over the bed were black and white photos. As Mom got closer, she realized that the photos were all of her. Some were taken at our family home and others were taken at other houses Mom would clean. Some through windows or over fences. She used the house phone to call the police and immediately drove to the end of the driveway. The lady ended up being investigated but continued to claim that it was a break-in. After some time, the police stopped with her searching and we ended up moving to a new town 4 months later. I'm 22 and this incident happened 1.5 years ago. I had just moved into my first apartment and was in the process of moving in. The door that led to my apartment locks itself automatically when closed. So I was going to the entrance of the apartment complex to get my mail while talking on the phone with my friend. I returned to the apartment and sat on the bed while opening the mail while using the phone. I dropped the phone on the floor and it landed under the bed. So I had to lie on the floor and stretch for it. I saw something that caught my eye. There was someone under my bed. My eyes widened and I choked the urge to scream. The person under my bed was lying still with his back towards me and his head to his chest, so I couldn't see his face and he didn't see me. Trying to be rational while so many thoughts rushed through my head, I picked up the phone. Said, "Sorry, I dropped my phone. I'm just going to take a shower and call you back." The bathroom is right by my bed, so I hastily walked in quietly, locked the door, turned the shower on, jumped out my window, and called the police. They told me to wait nearby, but to go across the street and see if anybody comes out the door of the apartment complex. This was during the summer and still light out. I placed myself across the street, hiding behind a car wall, watching my open bathroom window and the entry door. I called my friend and he came over just before the police. I gave them my keys and they went inside. Only moments later, 2 cops came out holding a thin and tired-looking man. His eyes looked crazy, but he didn't try to get away. The policeman that stood beside me and comforted me while the police searched through my house told me that the man stood outside my bathroom door with one of my kitchen knives waiting for me to come out. This man had somehow crept in my entry door while I was getting my mail and hid under the bed. The man that was trying to hurt me turned out to be a homeless person and was placed in a mental hospital. When I was 21, me and my girlfriend were upstate in my family's vacation mobile home. It was during a snowstorm, and we were sitting on the couch next to the heater snuggling and watching late-night TV. We were surrounded by absolutely nothing but forests in all directions. And all that was keeping us from the outside was a wooden door that had a broken lock. The last time my grandparents came up, my grandpa put a few cinder blocks by the door to use as a kind of barrier in the meantime, since the door opened inwards anyway. While we were watching TV, my girlfriend started shaking me, telling me she heard something outside. I assured her it was most likely a deer or bear or something. But then 5 minutes later, my girlfriend looked at me again. I heard it too. I muted the TV so we could hear it better. It sounded like someone was messing around in the little lawnmower shed outside. My car was parked outside and all the lights were on inside. If there was anybody out there, they knew we were inside. My girlfriend was urging me to go outside and check it out, but I told her she must be crazy to think that I was going out there. The sound stopped and there was nothing but the sound of the storm outside now. After a few minutes, I felt it safe to shut the inside lights and open the blinds and take a quick look outside. But it was too dark to see anything. I turned on the porch light and I was able to see a good portion of the front yard outside. There were footprints in the snow, not animal footprints. They were clearly shoe prints and they were headed in the direction of the backyard. I went to open the curtains to the backyard window. And when I did, I felt the urge to scream, but my girlfriend did instead. Even though there were no lights in the backyard, we could see a man dressed in all black and wearing a vendetta mask facing the window. I immediately shut the blinds and told my girlfriend to go hide in the bedroom while I grabbed my grandpa's hunting rifle out of the closet. I pushed the cinder blocks and a bunch of other heavy objects in front of the door as a barricade. Shut all the blinds and lights and went to hide with my girlfriend in the corner of the bedroom. There was a bang at the front door. He was trying to bust open the door. I don't even think he tried the knob, but it didn't matter either way. After a few futile bangs to the door, it seems the man finally gave up. I stayed up that whole night with the gun by my side while my girlfriend slept. We packed and left first thing in the morning, but a scary thing. There was a fresh set of footprints leading from the front yard window out into the woods. I haven't been up there since, but my grandparents have, and they said that there was no sign of a break-in or anything missing. I don't plan on ever going back up there. Back when my grandma was still alive, I would always walk down the block to her house every day to help with various chores. There was this one day that I walked over to her house the same time I always did and decided to let myself in. I was surprised she left the door unlocked. She was a very paranoid old lady and normally kept everything locked. I saw her bedroom door was opened upstairs, and I heard her opening and closing drawers and cabinets. I walked upstairs calling Grandma, and as I was about 5 feet from the door, she slammed her bedroom door shut. I knocked asking if everything was all right. And at that moment, my cell phone began to ring. It was my grandma's phone number. I was so confused, but I picked up the phone anyway. My grandma was on the other end telling me not to come over that day as she was walking over to her seniors club. I felt my heart skip a beat as she told me this. I hung up the phone before she could say anything else, remaining silent. I knew exactly what was going on. I played dumb and said, "Grandma, I'll be downstairs," and made my way to my grandma's kitchen to grab a knife and dial 911. It remained silent in the bedroom. After what happens, the police arrived and burst into the bedroom, and the loud and sudden bang of a gunshot caught me off guard. When the paramedics arrived and wheeled out the intruder, I recognized the man's face. It was my grandma's next-door neighbor. Apparently, he saw that my grandmother had left the house and broke in to look for jewelry. And when the police broke into the bedroom, they found the man hiding next to the door with a large knife in hand. If I had walked into that bedroom, I would have been as good as dead. The most haunting memory of my life. Me and my wife were getting home from dinner out, and as soon as we stepped out of the car, we noticed that our front door to our house was open. I told my wife to wait outside while I ran inside and ran straight up to her bedroom where I hid the shotgun. I loaded the gun and scanned every single room upstairs. There was no sign of anybody. I made my way down to scanning the main floor, followed by the basement. There was no sign of anybody and there was nothing missing or moved. I called the cops, and when they arrived, I told them what happened, and they began to investigate some rooms upstairs, followed by the basement. Nothing was turned up. They made a case of asking us if we were positive that we shut the door when we left. I myself was starting to have doubts, not completely sure if I had, but my wife remained confident that we had shut the door. The police seemed sure that if somebody had broken in, he didn't stick around long, as there didn't seem to be any signs of burglary. My wife was worried sick, crying that she wasn't comfortable being in the house. I comforted her the best I could, assuring her that whoever broke in the house left in a hurry. I finally fell asleep after hours of rolling around in the bed. But my sleep was immediately cut short by the disturbing scream of my wife. I looked at her and she was staring intently in the direction of the closet. It hit me like a bullet just then. I had forgotten to check the second closet. I looked over and saw through the briefest second a man poking his head out of the closet, and that before closing the closet door. Within 5 seconds, I had the shotgun loaded in hand and cocked it back to let the intruder know that I was armed. I screamed for him to come out, and just like that, the closet door opened. But instead of showing submission, he made a mad dash for the front door of the house. I could have shot him, but I didn't have it in me. He was never caught. He got away with it scot-free. I think having that gun saved us from a terrible fate. About a year ago, while still living under my parents' roof, I started experiencing some weird occurrences in my house, specifically my bedroom. While I was laying awake in my bed one late night, I heard a creaking sound coming from across the bedroom. My closet door had somehow been opened. When I got up to check it, I subconsciously checked for anybody inside my closet, even though I was 26 years old. Of course, there was nobody inside, so I shut the door and went back to bed. Later that same night, I would hear rumbly, rattling noises coming from up above the ceiling. It sounded like something in the air ducts. It was a very strange sound. I really had no idea what to think about it, but as soon as it stopped, I kind of forgot about it quickly and fell asleep. In the morning, I did tell my dad about sounds in the attic the previous night, but annoyingly, he didn't seem too interested, or he just didn't take me very seriously. That night, I again lay in my bed awake, reflecting on life, when yet again the slow creak of the closet door creeping open broke the silence. This time I felt genuinely afraid. I knew the door was completely shut. It would take somebody twisting the doorknob for it to be able to push open. This time I took an extra careful look inside the closet for anybody, even though it wasn't a big closet and there really wasn't anywhere somebody could hide. I rationalized it as being a broken doorknob or something. And that same night, I again heard the rattling sounds coming from above the ceiling. It was exactly what happened the previous night. The next morning, I convinced my dad to take a look at my closet door, but he quickly determined that the door was fine when it was closed. He pulled on it, and it showed no signs of coming off the latch. Of course, he suggested that I was simply leaving the door unlatched, but I knew I wasn't. That night, I sat up waiting for it to happen again, and right on cue, the closet door creaks open. I waited for the sounds above the ceiling, but there was just a long silence. I turned on my lamp and looked up to the air vent in my room, and I screamed at the top of my lungs. I could distinctly see 2 wide-open eyes peering through the vents at me. My parents barged into my room asking if I had gone insane. I explained everything, and they looked at each other like I had completely lost it. Not surprisingly, they dismissed it as a dream or the fact that I was too tired and machine things. They even began to lecture me about staying up too late. But to this day, I know I hadn't imagined it. It was too real. On the closet opening routinely, I know for a fact that wasn't in my imagination. I have never been a believer in the paranormal, but I still have absolutely no other explanation for those 3 nights.